Hi everybody, this is part 4, Human Relationships. We're talking about values and ethics. Please subscribe and then hit the button to alert you when a new video is up, and then tell me if you like it or not. It helps me to know. Make some suggestions, make some comments, okay? I'm adaptable. Okay, so first we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance and then do a bunch of exercises. Cognitive dissonance is a mental discomfort or tension you get when, at least in this context, you have conflicting beliefs or ideas, or you compare what you see going on around you with your values and ethics and ideas, and they are in conflict with each other. You go, well, what's that about? Well, what often happens is people generate a confirmation bias as a result of that, where they look around the world and they look for ways to confirm what they already believe so they don't have to suffer that mental tension. And they may actually ignore or downplay things that are conflicting with what they believe or how they behave. So in the terms of behaviors and values, the healthiest response is to adjust your behavior to coincide with your values and examine your beliefs in light of evidence, not to form confirmation biases, okay? Not to look around and downplay anything that conflicts with your value. Look for evidence, okay? Adjust your behavior so that when your behavior is inconsistent with your values, you adjust your behaviors. You don't adjust your values. One example of how this could happen in adjusting values is when you're using drugs and alcohol. So people who use drugs and alcohol can actually tolerate lots of mental tension, what we call cognitive dissonance, because they medicate the tension that they have. They medicate their cognitive dissonance. They continue to behave in ways that are conflicting with their core values by doing the drugs and alcohol. And when that dissonance rears its ugly head, they just do more drugs and alcohol, you see. It's one way to explain the ongoing use of drugs and alcohol that are clearly in conflict with their core values, even though they can see that their behavior is really not getting them anywhere. And the seeing that their behavior is not getting them anywhere is the cognitive dissonance. Okay, so the first exercise I want you to do is to imagine that you've received $10 million tax-free. It's in your bank. You don't owe any taxes on it. And I want you to list the first 5 things that you would do with that money. Okay? So pause the video now. All right. So you have the first 5 things you do with that money. What do they tell you are the values beneath those? Okay? Many of you may have said to solve the financial problems of families as well as your own self. What does that tell you? Is family a value? I bet that may be true. Look at those 5 and see if you can uncover values. Second exercise. I want you to think about being 90 years old and in good physical condition. You're not sick, you're not in pain, you can get around. What are the 3 things that you are sure you will do when you are 90? You still want to do these things. What are they? List those now. And then pause the video. Okay, so we're back from that pause where you listed 3 things when you're 90 that you can be sure you're going to do. Why is doing them so important, and what values come from those? Okay, think about that. Write those down. Next exercise. Achievement. Name one thing, one project you got done that gave you a real sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. What was it? And what were the things you did that allowed you to do that project? What were the core ingredients? So write those down. Pause the video. Okay, you're back. And what values are exposed by that achievement? Perseverance, connection to others. What? Next exercise. It's called excitement. What do you find yourself getting fanatical about and why? Okay, let me give you an example. For me, it's certain pieces of music that I just have an emotional attraction and attachment to that allows me to really feel things deeply at a deep level. That's valuable to me. That is to say, emotional connectedness. So write down what's exciting to you and pause the video. All right, so you're back. What kinds of things allowed you to get that project done, and what values does that expose for you? Okay. And now the last exercise in this group is list your core moral values, and I want you to think ahead of time before you do that about which values do you support with your behavior, which do you think a lot about that you know are yours, which do you want to be known by others for, and if push came to shove, which would you keep? You're going to list 5 and pause the video. All right. Now I want to cover a section on the possibility of there being universal ethical principles, universal values, okay? And the first one, all of these are just possibilities. I want you to think about the first one, which has to do with reverence for each person. Reverence for each person. So if you revere each person, what does that mean? It means that in everything you do, everything you intend to do, and by every means in thinking about all your goals, you treat everyone with respect because each person, no matter what, deserves dignity and reverence. In everyday life, that means that you simply try to understand and give latitude to a person's personal and cultural values whenever possible. And you don't belittle them for having that or holding those values and beliefs. It doesn't mean that everyone gets to do whatever they want. That's not the case. It means that you try to understand and be reverent towards their values, because they're going to be maybe a little different than yours. Maybe not. Okay? So what are some behaviors that demonstrate dignity and respect? Write some down. What are the reasons that account for variances in the kinds and amounts of respect we show other people? Because we do have differences in the amount of variances in our respect for others. Think about that and write that down. Second possible universal value could be do no harm. This is a part of most ethical guidelines for organizations that you might belong to and for professions that you might have. Do no harm. And what that means is that in every interaction with others, in every way we can possibly foresee, we don't behave in ways that reduce the condition of other people. And in everyday life, what that means is we behave carefully and thoughtfully so we don't harm someone's 4 dimensions: physical, cognitive, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. We don't harm those. Well, what's harm? Is harm not letting people do whatever they want? No. You can't do whatever you want, because whatever you want to do may be harmful to others. So, is it possible to never harm someone? No. Is it possible to not harm someone while also causing subjective pain and hardship? Yeah. You can not harm someone, but cause them pain. So if you took away a teenager's car because they violated speeding limits multiple times, and that's causing more insurance money to you, that's a greater cost. It's going to cause them hardship, it's going to cause them pain, but it's not causing them actual harm, right? You know, if you look at the golden rule across all major religions, they're essentially the same. Buddhism is hurt no others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. Christianity is clearly everything you do to others, do as you would have them do to you, unto you. This would be the law and the prophets. Islam is no one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself. Judaism is what is hateful to you, do not to your fellow man. This is the entire law. All the rest is commentary. And Taoism, ancient Chinese, is regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain and your neighbor's loss as your own loss. And you could go on and on from there. It's interesting that religions that knew nothing about each other, or which did, seem to have the same core value that we call the Golden Rule. That suggests a biological origin for that one. Yeah. And then we have something called showing goodwill, which means we promote the well-being of others, even if it doesn't immediately benefit us. So we take reasonable steps to develop a person's physical, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual well-being, especially with a close friend or loved one. Absolutely. How about this one? Being fair. We seek to achieve equality and justice, those are two different things, in our interactions with others, across time and situations, because everyone is equal in inherent dignity and worth. In everyday life, we remain aware of how we are treating others and behave in ways to protect fair treatment of others. We point out an attempt to rectify unfairness and injustice. The quote I like is that until injustice is as painful to the one who is not receiving injustice as it is to those who experience injustice, then justice is not possible. That's a paraphrase. And then being effective. How do you be effective? The greatest good for the greatest number of people and other living things. And when you're in a partnership with someone, as in a lover partnership, this means you choose behaviors as best for both of you, not just for you. Yeah, so if I want to buy a new car, then I should be thinking about what impact that's going to have and consult my partner in that. Yeah. Yeah, in everyday life, we use thoughtful and creative problem solving in making decisions and choosing behaviors. So you also support higher levels of organization, like property taxes. I don't have children in school where property taxes go to support. I support them because that's important to the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Absolutely. And then perhaps the last one could be anticipating downstream consequences, where you make choices and behave in ways that don't conflict with the needs and well-beings of others as we enact plans for the future. And if bad consequences occur for greater numbers of people, or bad consequences outweigh the good, then we seek other choices, even if the good was going to be for us. You see? Now, those things are perhaps universal ethical principles. And if we think about them, they are a set of principles that allow for individuals to exist at higher planes of living, higher planes of ethical conduct, higher planes of morality, perhaps. So, that's the last one for ethics and values. Enjoy.